People rarely realize the moment their lives begin to change. Sometimes, it starts with an unexpected knock at the door. I had just finished my second shift when the bus finally stopped 3 blocks from my apartment. My feet hurt, my shoulders ached, and the grocery bag in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Inside were a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a small box of pasta. Enough to get us through another 2 days. If I was careful, the old apartment building looked exactly as it always did. Faded brick walls, a flickering hallway light, mailboxes with peeling paint. It wasn't much, but it was home, or at least, the closest thing Emma and I had to one. I climbed the stairs quietly, hoping she had remembered to lock the door after school. She always did. Still, Mother's worried. That's what we were good at. Before I reached the 3rd floor, I heard footsteps running toward me. Mom! Emma threw herself into my arms before I had even reached the landing. Her blonde hair bounced wildly as she wrapped both arms around my waist. You're late. I know. I kissed the top of her head. I'm sorry. Were there lots of customers? There always are. She took the grocery bag from my hand with both arms. It was almost too heavy for her. I can carry it. I know you can. Watching her try anyway made my heart ache. No 7-year-old should feel responsible for helping her mother survive. Yet Emma never complained. She simply smiled. The apartment was small enough that I could cross it in 12 steps. A tiny kitchen, one worn-out couch, a narrow hallway leading to a single bedroom we shared. Everything smelled faintly of laundry soap and old wood. Emma placed the groceries on the counter. I did my homework. I'm proud of you. And she hesitated. The landlord came. The smile disappeared from my face. What did he say? He asked if we were moving. I forced myself to remain calm. And what did you tell him? I said this is our home. I swallowed hard. You did the right thing. The rent was late. Again, not because I didn't work. Because sometimes working wasn't enough. I opened the refrigerator. Half a bottle of ketchup. Some butter. 2 eggs. That was all. I quickly closed the door before Emma could notice how little remained. I'll make pasta. She smiled. My favorite. It wasn't. It was simply all we had. A soft knock echoed through the apartment. 3 slow knocks. Not loud. Not impatient. I frowned. We're not expecting anyone. Emma looked toward the door. Maybe it's Mrs. Jenkins. The neighbor. She borrowed sugar yesterday. I walked toward the entrance. Another knock. Steady. Calm. For reasons I couldn't explain, my heartbeat quickened. I unlocked the deadbolt, opened the door, and forgot how to breathe. A tall man stood quietly in the hallway. Dark tailored coat. Broad shoulders. A neatly groomed beard. The faint outline of black tattoos disappeared beneath his sleeves. His blue eyes met mine without arrogance. Without apology. Behind him, no bodyguards. No expensive cars. Only the quiet evening light spilling through the stairwell window. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he gave a small, respectful nod. My name is Adrian Romano. The name meant nothing to me, but something in his presence made the entire hallway feel impossibly still. I'm sorry, I said carefully. I think you have the wrong apartment. I don't. His voice was calm, measured. I've been looking for you. Every protective instinct inside me awakened. Emma quietly stepped behind me, holding the edge of my sweater. I straightened instinctively. If you're selling something, I'm not. If you're collecting money, I'm not. He remained exactly where he was, never taking one step closer. Then his eyes drifted past me for the briefest moment, toward the tiny apartment behind my shoulder, toward the worn couch, the patched curtains, the faded walls. Something changed in his expression. Not pity, not shock, something quieter. He looked back at me, then asked a question so unexpectedly gentle that it caught me completely off guard. May I come in? The smallest homes often hide the greatest acts of love. I didn't answer immediately. My hand remained on the doorknob while Emma quietly peeked around my shoulder. The man standing in the hallway looked nothing like the people who usually knocked on our door. He wasn't impatient. He wasn't smiling to make me trust him. He simply waited. Calm. Respectful. As though he already understood why I hesitated. I'm sorry. I tightened my grip on the door. I don't invite strangers into my home. I wouldn't expect you to. His voice never rose. If it helps. He reached slowly into the inside pocket of his coat. Every protective instinct inside me flared. Emma moved closer. The man noticed. He immediately stopped. I'm not reaching for a weapon. He carefully removed a simple leather wallet instead. Inside was a business card. He extended it toward me without crossing the doorway. Adrian Romano. No title, no company, just his name and a phone number. I only wanted you to know who I am. I accepted the card but didn't move. It still doesn't explain why you're here. It will, but only if you allow me 5 minutes. I studied him. His tailored coat was expensive. His polished shoes had walked through the rain. Yet there wasn't a trace of arrogance in the way he carried himself. Only patience. Emma tugged gently on my sleeve. Mom, I looked down. He doesn't look mean. Children had a way of seeing things adults often missed. Still, kind eyes didn't guarantee kind intentions. I stepped back just enough to keep the chain lock attached. You can stand inside the doorway. Nothing more. He nodded once. Thank you. After removing his coat, he stepped inside. His eyes quietly moved around the apartment. The faded wallpaper, the tiny kitchen, the worn dining table with one chair repaired using wood glue, the patched curtains that barely covered the window. He said nothing, not one word. That somehow made it harder to breathe. I'm sorry it's small. The apology escaped before I realized I was speaking. He turned toward me immediately. You don't owe me an apology. Embarrassed, I looked away. I wasn't expecting visitors. Emma suddenly appeared beside him, holding a small glass of water. We don't have juice. She smiled shyly. But you can have this. For a moment, Adrian simply stared at the chipped glass in her hands. The rim had a tiny crack near the edge. It was the only matching glass we had left. He accepted it with both hands. Thank you. Emma beamed. Mom says guests should always have something to drink. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the glass. I think your mom has taught you something very important. Emma giggled before running back toward the kitchen. Silence settled between us again. Then Adrian's eyes drifted toward the refrigerator. Its door hadn't closed completely after Emma reached for the butter earlier. From where he stood, he could see almost everything inside. 1 carton of milk, 2 eggs, half a loaf of bread, nothing else. He looked away immediately, pretending he hadn't noticed. But it was too late. I had seen the change in his expression. Not pity, respect. The kind that comes from witnessing someone fighting quietly without asking the world for sympathy. I'll make dinner soon. I said quickly. We're fine. I believe you. He answered softly. And that's exactly what concerns me. Before I could ask what he meant, Emma hurried back carrying a small plate. On it rested the last homemade oatmeal cookie we had baked together over the weekend. She held it out toward Adrian with both hands. You can have this too. I opened my mouth. Emma. She interrupted me with complete innocence. Guests eat first. Adrian looked from the cookie to Emma, then to me. For the first time since he had arrived, the composure in his blue eyes cracked. Not from sadness, from memory. He slowly accepted the cookie, as though it were the most valuable gift anyone had ever placed in his hands. The people who give away their last piece of bread are often the ones who have known hunger the longest. Adrian held the oatmeal cookie for several quiet seconds. He didn't eat it. He simply looked at it, as though the tiny, uneven circle of oats carried a memory far heavier than its weight. Emma tilted her head. Don't you like cookies? A faint smile finally appeared on his face. I do. Then why aren't you eating it? He knelt until he was at eye level with her. Because gifts like this deserve to be appreciated first. Emma giggled. I helped Mom make them. I can tell. They're not perfect. I think they are. She smiled with the kind of pride only children could wear so honestly. I watched the exchange without saying a word. It was strange. This man, who had arrived unannounced only minutes earlier, somehow knew exactly how to speak to my daughter. Not with expensive promises. Not with exaggerated kindness. Just respect. Emma skipped back toward the living room, humming softly to herself. Adrian stood again. He carefully placed the untouched cookie on the small plate. I'll save it for later. You really don't have to. I want to. The apartment fell quiet once more. Outside, rain tapped gently against the old window. Inside, the sound of our aging refrigerator filled the silence. Adrian glanced toward the kitchen. May I ask you something? I suppose. How many jobs do you work? The question caught me off guard. 2. And you still come home in time to help Emma with school? I try. When do you sleep? I laughed softly. Whenever life allows. He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked toward the framed photograph resting on the shelf. It showed Emma and me at the county fair 2 years earlier. Our clothes were simple. Our smiles were genuine. You both look happy. We were. The tickets were free that day. I hadn't meant to say it aloud. Embarrassment warmed my cheeks. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? I don't like people feeling sorry for me. I don't. His answer came immediately. I admire you. No one had ever used that word. Not for me. Not after years of unpaid bills, double shifts, and pretending everything was fine. Admire. The word settled somewhere deep inside my chest. Before I could respond, Emma returned carrying a stack of colored papers. Mom, I finished my drawing. She spread them across the table. Most were filled with bright flowers, blue skies, little houses. One picture caught Adrian's attention. A small family stood beneath a large tree. A little girl, a woman, and an empty figure outlined only with pencil. He studied it quietly. Who's this? Emma shrugged. I don't know yet. I froze. She continued innocently. My teacher said every family picture has lots of people. So, I left space. Adrian didn't speak. Neither did I. Emma pointed at the unfinished outline. Maybe someday someone nice will stand there. The room became impossibly still. Children never realized how deeply their simple words could reach. Adrian slowly looked at me. There was no pressure in his eyes. No expectation. Only understanding. He reached into his coat pocket once more. This time he placed a small envelope on the kitchen table. I frowned immediately. I can't accept money. It isn't money. I didn't touch it. What is it? A name. He slid the envelope a little closer. Someone who owns several apartment buildings in this neighborhood. Confused, I stared at him. Why would I need that? Because tomorrow morning. He paused. Your landlord is planning to evict 3 families. The color drained from my face. Our apartment is one of them. Adrian met my frightened eyes with complete certainty. And before sunrise, he gently pushed the envelope toward me. I'd like to make sure that never happens. Sometimes the greatest promises are made without anyone saying the words out loud. I stared at the envelope lying on the kitchen table. It looked ordinary. Plain white paper. No markings. No seal. Yet somehow it felt heavier than every unpaid bill I had hidden inside the drawer beneath the coffee maker. Our apartment. The words barely escaped my lips. Adrian gave a slow nod. The owner has already signed the paperwork. No. I shook my head. There must be a mistake. I wish there were. Emma looked back and forth between us, sensing the change in the room without fully understanding it. Mom. I forced a smile. It's okay, sweetheart. It wasn't. Not even close. If we're being evicted. I whispered. Where are we supposed to go? Adrian remained silent for a moment. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because he understood that some questions deserved respect before solutions. You've lived here for 6 years. I looked up. How do you know that? I asked. You investigated me? I verified facts. The distinction should have bothered me. Instead, I found myself strangely relieved. He wasn't making assumptions. He had taken the time to learn the truth. I don't understand. You don't have to. His voice stayed calm. You only need to know that none of this is your fault. I laughed bitterly. It certainly feels like it. He glanced around the apartment again. His eyes rested on the patched blanket folded neatly over the couch. The stack of library books Emma borrowed every Saturday because buying books wasn't an option. The tiny sewing kit beside the lamp. You repair everything yourself. It wasn't a question. I try. The blanket. My mother taught me. The curtains. I couldn't afford new ones. The backpack hanging by the door. I smiled faintly. Emma's favorite. It has been stitched 3 times. 4. His expression softened. You never stop trying. What else am I supposed to do? Our eyes met. For the first time that evening, I noticed something beneath his composed exterior. Weariness. Not physical exhaustion. The kind that came from carrying responsibilities too heavy for one person. He reached toward the envelope. Open it. Slowly, I unfolded the paper inside. It wasn't an eviction notice. It wasn't a contract. It was the name and direct phone number of the building's owner, along with one handwritten sentence. Call him at 8 tomorrow morning. He'll be expecting you. I looked at Adrian in confusion. What does this mean? It means you're going to have a conversation. And then you'll receive a new lease. I blinked. A new lease. For the same apartment. I frowned. I don't understand. You don't need to. I can't accept charity. His blue eyes never left mine. This isn't charity. What is it? Justice. The word echoed quietly through the room. Justice. Not generosity. Not pity. Justice. Emma wandered over, and slipped her small hand into mine. Are we moving? I knelt beside her. I don't know yet. She looked at Adrian. Do you? He crouched until they were eye level. I know something. What? No little girl should have to wonder where she'll sleep. Emma considered his answer carefully. Then, with complete sincerity, she wrapped her tiny arms around his neck. It lasted only a second. Maybe two. Adrian froze. Completely. As though no one had embraced him without fear in a very long time. When Emma stepped back, she smiled. Thank you for helping my mom. His voice was almost inaudible. You don't have to thank me. Why? Because helping people who deserve better. He paused, swallowing emotions he rarely allowed to surface. Is something I should have started doing a long time ago. Outside, the rain finally stopped. A narrow beam of evening sunlight slipped through the patched curtains, filling the little apartment with warm golden light. For the first time in years, the room didn't feel quite so small. And as Adrian quietly watched Emma laugh over one of her drawings, I realized he was no longer looking at our apartment. He was looking at the life we had fought so hard to protect. And somewhere behind those steady blue eyes, he had already made a promise he intended to keep. Real strength isn't measured by what a powerful man can take. It's measured by what he quietly chooses to protect. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the envelope resting on the kitchen table. Justice. Adrian had called it justice. I wasn't sure I believed him. Life had taught me that people with influence rarely appeared without expecting something in return. Yet when I replayed every moment of the evening, I couldn't remember him asking for anything. Not my trust. Not my gratitude. Not even my time. Only 5 minutes. And somehow those 5 minutes had unsettled everything I thought I understood. The next morning, I walked Emma to school as usual. She skipped ahead, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Do you think Mr. Adrian likes oatmeal cookies? I smiled. I think he does. Then maybe I'll make him another one. You'll have to ask him first. She giggled. I think he'll say yes. Children trusted with their hearts. Adults trusted with proof. I wished I could still be more like Emma. At exactly 8 o'clock, I dialed the number written on the paper. It rang only once. Good morning, Miss Parker. The voice surprised me. You were expecting my call? Yes. I'm Richard Collins, the owner of your building. I froze. I received your number. I know. His tone was polite. Mr. Romano asked me to expect you. My fingers tightened around the phone. He did. There appears to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding regarding your lease. A misunderstanding? Your eviction notice has been withdrawn. I couldn't speak. In addition, he continued, your rent will remain unchanged for the next 3 years. 3 years. I leaned against the kitchen counter before my knees gave out. I don't understand. I believe Mr. Romano prefers actions over explanations. The call ended a minute later. I remained standing there, staring at the silent phone. None of it felt real. That afternoon, after finishing my shift at the cafe, I stopped at a neighborhood grocery store. For the first time in months, I bought fresh fruit. A carton of eggs. Chicken. Vegetables. Nothing extravagant. Just enough to prepare a proper dinner. As I walked toward the register, the cashier smiled. Looks like someone's celebrating. I smiled back. Maybe. When Emma and I returned home, something caught my attention immediately. 3 identical apartment doors stood open down the hallway. Neighbors gathered together, laughing. Children chased each other between the mailboxes. Mrs. Jenkins waved excitedly. Grace. I hurried over. What's going on? You haven't heard? Heard what? The building owner canceled every eviction. My heart skipped. Every eviction? She nodded. Not just ours. The Johnson family. The Alvarez twins. Old Mr. Miller downstairs. All of us. I looked down the hallway in stunned silence. Families who had spent weeks living in fear were smiling again. Someone had even placed flowers beside the entrance. Emma squeezed my hand. Mom, they're happy. They are. Mrs. Jenkins lowered her voice. No one knows who convinced the owner. I did. Or at least, I thought I did. That evening, another soft knock echoed through the apartment. 3 calm knocks. Exactly like before. Emma raced toward the door. It's him. I opened it. Adrian stood there, wearing the same composed expression. This time, however, he wasn't empty-handed. He carried a simple paper bag from the neighborhood bakery. I hope I'm not interrupting dinner. I looked at the groceries on my kitchen counter. The fresh vegetables. The bread. The chicken. Then back at him. You already knew. He tilted his head slightly. Knew what? That every family would be allowed to stay. A faint smile touched his lips. I thought children deserved to keep sleeping in their own beds. Emotion caught in my throat. You didn't just help me. No, you helped everyone. He glanced toward the hallway, where laughter still drifted through the open windows. I simply reminded someone that buildings are made of bricks. His eyes met mine. But neighborhoods are built by people. For the first time since meeting Adrian Romano, I realized his greatest power had never been his influence. It was that he used it without needing anyone to know his name. A person's past is revealed less by what they own than by what they quietly refuse to forget. Adrian visited again 3 evenings later. Not with expensive gifts. Not with bodyguards. Just another paper bag from the neighborhood bakery. Emma ran to the door before I could. You're back. I said I might be. He smiled gently. I brought cinnamon rolls. Emma gasped dramatically. My favorite. I remembered. She took the bag carefully, as though it contained treasure. You remembered? I try to remember important things. She looked at me with wide eyes. I like him. I couldn't help smiling. I noticed. Adrian removed his coat and hung it neatly by the door. It was such a simple gesture. Yet somehow it made him feel less like a visitor. More like someone who respected every corner of our little home. Dinner was almost ready. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables. Nothing fancy, but it was the first complete meal Emma and I had shared in months. I hope you don't mind. I looked toward Adrian. We were about to eat. He hesitated. I don't want to intrude. Emma answered before I could. Mom always says nobody should eat alone. I laughed softly. I suppose I did say that. Adrian accepted the invitation with a quiet nod. The 3 of us squeezed around the tiny kitchen table. There were only 3 mismatched chairs. Emma happily claimed the smallest one. For several minutes. The only sounds were forks against plates and Emma telling stories about school. Then she suddenly asked, Mr. Adrian? Yes. Were you ever little? I nearly laughed. He looked genuinely thoughtful. I think so. You think so? It was a long time ago. Emma smiled. Were you poor like us? The room became very still. I immediately reached for her hand. Emma, it's all right. Adrian stopped me gently. Children deserved honest answers. He looked down at his plate. When I was your age, my mother and I shared one bedroom. Emma blinked. Really? He nodded. Sometimes we ate soup for dinner. I like soup. So did we. Did your mom make cookies? A faint smile appeared. When she could. What happened to her? Silence lingered. Long enough that I regretted not changing the subject sooner. Finally, she worked harder than anyone I've ever known. His voice became quieter, but she became sick. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. So am I. No one spoke for a while. The rain tapped softly against the window again. Adrian reached into his wallet. Not for money. Instead, he removed an old photograph. The edges were worn from years of being carried. He placed it gently on the table. It showed a young woman standing outside a small apartment building. She wore a faded blue dress. Her smile looked tired, but full of love. She's beautiful, Emma said. She was. Adrian answered. My mother. I studied the photograph carefully. The apartment behind her looked remarkably familiar. Not identical. Just similar. Small. Modest. Lived in. You've kept this all these years. I carry it every day. Emma looked at him curiously. So you don't forget? He smiled. So I remember. What? He looked directly at me before answering. What it feels like to have almost nothing. His words settled quietly inside the room. Suddenly, everything made sense. The groceries. The canceled evictions. The bakery bags. The respect. He wasn't helping us because he pitied us. He was helping because he recognized us. Because once, long before expensive suits, influence, and power, he had been the little boy sitting at a table much like ours. As Adrian carefully returned the photograph to his wallet, I realized something that changed the way I saw him forever. He hadn't rescued our family to erase his past. He had protected ours, because he had never forgotten his own. The strongest walls around the heart are usually built by people who once had no one to protect them. After that dinner, something changed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just enough that I began noticing Adrian in places I hadn't before. Never close enough to intrude. Always close enough to help. One Saturday morning, Emma and I walked to the neighborhood farmer's market. She insisted on carrying our reusable shopping bag. It's my job. I smiled. I thought your job was keeping me company. I can do both. Halfway across the street, an elderly man struggled to lift a fallen grocery cart. Before I could step forward, Emma slipped away from my side. Wait. She hurried over and picked up the oranges that had rolled across the sidewalk. I'll help. The old man smiled. Thank you, sweetheart. Within seconds, 2 more strangers joined her. Then another. Then another. In less than a minute, every orange was back in the cart. The old man looked around in disbelief. I've never seen people help this quickly. Neither had I, until I noticed Adrian standing across the street. He wasn't participating. He wasn't directing anyone. He simply watched quietly before disappearing into the crowd. Later that afternoon, I found him sitting alone on a bench outside the community park. He held a cup of black coffee. Nothing else. No security. No expensive watch flashing in the sunlight. Just a man watching children play. I thought I might find you here. He looked up and smiled faintly. I wondered how long it would take. I sat beside him. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Emma raced across the playground with a group of children, laughing so hard I could hear her from 50 yards away. I haven't heard her laugh like that in a long time. Adrian followed my gaze. She sounds happy. She is. I turned toward him. I owe you an apology. His eyebrows lifted slightly. For what? I judged you before I knew you. You were protecting your daughter. I still assumed the worst. He nodded thoughtfully. I've given people plenty of reasons to. His honesty surprised me. You don't deny it. I've made mistakes. He stared into his coffee. Some decisions can't be undone. The breeze carried fallen leaves across the path between us. I've spent years building influence. He continued quietly. But lately, he watched Emma helping another little girl climb the playground ladder. I've started wondering what it was all for. I studied his face. There was no pride. No attempt to impress me. Only a man asking himself a question he had avoided for years. You've already changed this neighborhood. He shook his head. I changed paperwork. You gave families hope. I gave them another chance. That's the same thing. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Do you know why I keep coming back here? I smiled softly. I've wondered. Because every time I leave. His eyes drifted toward Emma. I remember the life my mother wanted me to have. Emotion tightened my throat. And every time I arrive. He continued. I realize how far away I wandered from it. Neither of us noticed Emma until she suddenly appeared between us holding 2 tiny wildflowers. One for Mom. She handed me the yellow flower. And one for Mr. Adrian. She offered him the white one. He accepted it with the same care he had shown that first oatmeal cookie. As payment, she declared proudly, for fixing everyone's homes. Adrian smiled. I don't need payment. I know. Emma grinned. But nice people deserve flowers. For a brief second, I saw moisture gather in Adrian's eyes before he looked away. He slipped the tiny flower carefully into the inside pocket of his jacket. Not because it was valuable, because it came from a little girl who believed kindness should always be remembered. Watching him protect that fragile flower, I finally understood something. The most guarded man I had ever met wasn't afraid of losing power. He was afraid of losing the part of himself that Emma had quietly helped him find again. A home becomes a family the moment someone chooses to stay, even when they have every reason to leave. Autumn arrived quietly. The maple trees outside our apartment building turned shades of amber and gold. Children filled the sidewalks after school. Neighbors lingered longer in the evenings. The building felt different now, not because the walls had changed, because the people inside them smiled more. Emma had noticed it first. Everyone says hello now. They always did. No. She shook her head. Now they mean it. I realized she was right. Fear had disappeared from the hallways. People no longer rushed past each other with lowered eyes. Mrs. Jenkins baked muffins for the Johnson family. Mr. Miller fixed broken bicycles for the neighborhood children. Even the building itself somehow seemed warmer. One Friday evening, Emma came running into the apartment waving an envelope. Mom, what is it? My teacher picked my essay. For what? Family Day. I smiled proudly. That's wonderful. She suddenly grew quiet. But I have to invite someone. You'll invite me. I know. She hesitated again. And another grown-up. The room fell silent. She looked down at her shoes. Can I invite Mr. Adrian? My heart skipped. Why him? Emma answered so naturally that it almost hurt. Because he always comes when he says he will. Children measured love differently than adults. Not by grand speeches. By consistency. By showing up. That evening, Adrian visited as he often did now. this time carrying nothing except a small notebook. I found this at a used bookstore. He handed it to Emma. Blank pages. A blue cloth cover. For my drawings? For your dreams. Emma hugged the notebook tightly. I'll fill every page. I hope you do. While Emma disappeared into the bedroom to begin drawing immediately, I poured 2 cups of coffee. We stood by the kitchen window watching rain gather on the glass. She wants you to attend family day. He looked genuinely surprised. Me? She asked. Silence settled between us. I don't know if that's appropriate. I wasn't sure either. He nodded slowly. People might ask questions. They probably will. His expression became thoughtful. I've spent years making sure no one asked about me. And now? He smiled faintly. Now one little girl keeps inviting me to school events. I laughed for the first time in days. The sound felt unfamiliar. Comfortable. I've missed hearing that. He said quietly. Hearing what? You laugh. The words lingered between us. Neither of us looked away. For a brief moment, the apartment seemed impossibly quiet. Then Emma burst back into the kitchen holding her newest drawing. I finished. She placed it proudly on the table. Another family portrait. But this one was different. A little girl. A smiling mother. And beside them, a tall man with a beard. His sleeves showed tiny black lines that looked suspiciously like tattoos. Emma pointed proudly. I finished him. Neither Adrian nor I spoke. She continued happily. My teacher says families are made of people who care for each other. She looked up at Adrian. So now the picture looks right. Emotion washed across his face so suddenly that he turned toward the window. Outside, rain continued falling softly. Inside, the little drawing rested on the table between us. Not as a declaration, not as a promise, simply as the honest view of a child. After a long silence, Adrian carefully picked up the drawing. May I keep a copy? Emma frowned. You can keep the real one. He blinked. The real one? I'll draw another. She smiled brightly. This one's for you. His hands trembled almost imperceptibly as he accepted the paper. For a man who had spent years surrounded by contracts, wealth, and influence, nothing he had ever been given carried more meaning than a child's crayon drawing. And watching him hold it so carefully, I realized something I had been too afraid to admit. Some people arrive unexpectedly, not to change your address, but to change the meaning of the word home. The greatest love stories are not about being rescued. They are about finding someone who reminds you who you were always meant to be. Nearly a year passed. Life never became perfect, but it became peaceful. The apartment was still small. The wallpaper was still faded. The kitchen table still had a scratch running through its center. Yet every corner of that home carried laughter now. Emma had grown taller. Her drawings covered almost every empty space on the refrigerator. Some featured butterflies. Others showed neighborhood picnics. One picture never changed. A little girl. A smiling mother. A tall bearded man standing beside them. She drew the same 3 people over and over. One spring afternoon, the community gathered in the courtyard for the annual neighborhood picnic. Children chased bubbles across the grass. Neighbors shared homemade food. Someone played soft jazz through an old speaker. It wasn't a wealthy neighborhood. It never had been. But no one seemed to notice. Happiness had finally become something everyone could afford. Mrs. Jenkins handed me a paper plate. I haven't seen this place so alive in 20 years. I smiled. Neither have I. Across the courtyard, Adrian was helping Mr. Miller assemble a new wooden bench for the playground. No expensive suit today, just rolled up sleeves. His tattoos peeked from beneath the fabric. The neighborhood children treated him like he had always belonged there. Not because they knew his past, because they knew his character. Emma tugged excitedly at my hand. Mom, they're announcing the volunteer award. What award? The one everyone voted for. I laughed. I didn't even know there was voting. The community organizer stepped onto the small wooden stage. We often celebrate people who give generously. He smiled. But this year, we'd like to honor someone who gave quietly. The crowd fell silent. He never asked for recognition. He never accepted praise. He simply reminded us what neighbors are supposed to do. Everyone turned at once. Toward Adrian. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. I think they've made a mistake. He whispered to me. They haven't. I answered softly. The organizer extended a small wooden plaque. Adrian walked forward reluctantly. He accepted it with both hands. Then looked at the crowd. I don't deserve this. Someone in the audience called out. Maybe not. Laughter echoed warmly. But we're giving it to you anyway. Even Adrian laughed. A rare, honest laugh. When the applause faded, he spoke quietly. My mother used to tell me something. The courtyard became still. She said, if life ever gives you more than you need, build a longer table, not a taller fence. He glanced toward Emma. She smiled proudly. I spent many years building fences. His eyes found mine. But this neighborhood, he paused, reminded me how to build tables again. No one applauded immediately. Some moments were too meaningful to interrupt. Emma suddenly ran onto the stage. She wrapped both arms around Adrian's waist. I told you nice people deserve good things. The crowd laughed through tears. Adrian looked at me, not asking permission, not asking a question, simply waiting. I walked toward them. Emma reached for my hand, then took Adrian's. She placed both of our hands together. There, she declared. Now nobody lets go. The simplicity of her words dissolved every fear I had carried for so long. Adrian gently intertwined his fingers with mine, not possessively, not dramatically, as though asking a silent question. I answered by holding his hand just a little tighter. Above us, the evening sun painted the neighborhood in warm golden light. The same apartment building, the same sidewalks, the same people, only our hearts had changed. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Emma taped one final drawing onto the refrigerator. It showed the three of us standing beneath a large maple tree. Above our heads, she had written in careful, uneven letters, home is the place where people choose each other. I stood quietly beside Adrian, reading those words. For the first time in years, I understood something my younger self never could. The man who arrived unexpectedly at my door had not changed everything because he was powerful. He changed everything because, when he looked at a struggling mother and her little girl, he didn't see strangers. He saw a family worth protecting. And in protecting ours, he finally found his own.